You're listening to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Well, it's like when we audit the mod with Logic and give them the action items that they're going to use to lower their total cost of risk.
Tactical skills that will help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Technology is not an expense, it's an investment. Look at what Think HR has done for our clients and even our team. It's an amazing product, and I'm so thankful we have that.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Things are changing for us in 2021. Not all big business anymore. Now that we have CoverWallet on our team, it's amazing that we're going to be able to write small business profitably.
This is Power Producer Shop Talk. Production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Power Producers Shop Talk. We are back for another installment. This is number 3 with Crystal Ware, and she's got a big announcement she's going to make at the end of this. But, you know, when I talked with Crystal about coming back on, because we originally talked about doing like 5 or 6 shop talks, and we did 3, and it kind of fizzled out. And we got busy doing our own stuff. And now, you know, now she's got some time and ability to focus on this. And I wanted to get on and talk about the things we talked about in the prior 2 episodes. But this one is something I think that is really, really important. And, you know, the subject that we're going to talk about today is knowing your own worth, and specifically why it's important for women in the workplace, whether you're a salesperson or an employee. I'm going to tell you, I think that that's a huge deal. I'm also going to tell you that I don't think that concept is limited to females. I think it is more applicable and more, probably more evident that's an issue that women need to be aware of, and they do need to know their worth. And in fact, I tell people, even in Killing Commercial, when they're doing their business plan, you need to calculate your hourly rate, figure out what your hourly rate is, what you're worth, and anything that's not going to pay you that, don't do it. Like that's literally how I approach my day. If it's not something that's going to hit what I feel like I'm worth per hour, I'm not going to talk to the prospect. I'm not going to deal with the issue, period, because it doesn't make sense. That doesn't count running the agency and putting out fires and things along those lines, but literally any revenue bearing type activity, it's got to hit it's got to hit what I call my minimum wage, which is what my hourly rate is. I'm not going to work for anything below that. So talk about that a little bit, because your perspective is obviously going to be different than mine, just due to basic, you know, science and the fact that you're female and I'm not. But, you know, I want you to get into this, because I think that it's something that needs to be said. And I also think that, you know, fellas, if you think you're going to tune out on this, don't, because that's part of the problem. You tune out on stuff like this, and now we have issues where people need to try and figure out what their worth is when we should help them figure that out. So keep listening. I can promise you this episode's going to be fire.
Yeah, so this has come up to me, you know, in talking to women in the workforce, talking to college students, young employees, even older employees. I've talked and helped women through a lot of questions about asking for salary, negotiating, talking about their fees and engagement for sales or producing for insurance. And, you know, I've noticed that the segment of population of women that is willing to go out there with what they with what they perceive, right? It's all subject and relative to what you perceive as a big number. But I would say it's less than 20% of women that feel comfortable going out there and saying, this is what I'm worth. This is what I demand for this job, this, you know, engagement, or whatever the case may be. You know, I think the same principles apply, no matter what industry you're in or what job you're in. But I think that it's especially difficult for women. I do see that there are some men that also find it difficult to talk about money or ask for certain, you know, amounts, certain level of compensation. But it seems like it happens more frequently to women. The statistics show that women across the board, it probably isn't taking into account sales other than salaried positions, but that women typically make 84% of what an equivalent male salary would be. And
I'll be honest with
so,
you, that's actually higher than I thought you were going to say.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was a little higher than I thought as well. But I think it's because we don't always ask. And so that is what I have wanted to start talking about and going forward, is helping women. I mean, I already do that in my personal life with people, but just helping women see what is your value, what is your worth, and make sure you ask for it. You don't ask, you don't get. I mean, there are plenty of instances where actually one of my really good friends was complaining one day that, and it actually was a woman to a woman. Her company had hired somebody that was job coded, probably the same as her, maybe like a half a step down, but came in with a 30% higher salary. I don't know really how she found this out. Stuff gets around the office. It's not uncommon for people to find out. That's why employers don't want you to talk about your salary, but there's no laws against it, people. If you want to talk with your colleague about
so
what
funny.
your salary is, feel free. It's only cultural. There's no law.
It's so funny that you say that, because earlier this week we did a webinar, a free webinar with Carothers, who's the chief legal expert for Mineral. And that's one of the things she's talked about when we were talking about kind of current HR trends that you can leverage for P&C opportunities. And somehow in the course of discussion, she brought that up. It's one of the number one ways, she said, that employers are getting themselves into trouble, because they're attempting to prohibit people from talking about that in the workplace. And they're not allowed to do it. Like, they can't do that.
No, absolutely not. They can't. I mean, it's your personal business. If you want to talk about it, just like if you want to talk about your husband or your problem with your kids, I mean, it's your personal business, but you can talk to your colleagues about it. And I never felt uncomfortable about that. And I think it's because when you go to law school, the top law firms, they basically post what their L1 or your first year attorneys are going to make. So it's kind of open. So then you kind of talk about it with your law school mates about, what they're getting, or you just know because it's posted, if you're going to that firm, you're going to get X. So there's no secretness around that. Now, how the scales start changing once you're in the company, that's different. But so I never really had that heartburn about it. But talking about it and understanding and asking around to the extent you're comfortable, right? Like if you have office mates, colleagues that, might be put off that you're prying, but if you have good friends that you have coffee with, feel free to ask. It doesn't hurt. And so I had this really good friend who found that out, and I was trying to mentor her and talk to her about it. Like, here's what your value is. Look, I don't even know the job that she's doing, right? I just know how to establish your value that transcends against industry and jobs. Like, there are foundational things that you can say about yourself. I'm a good communicator. I have all these special projects. I've worked with this level of executives, or whatever the case may be. There are things that you can talk about that don't have to be necessarily technical pieces of your job. And that's what I was telling her, that you're doing X, Y, and Z. And I just know this from picking up on our little conversations over the years. You are in a prime position to go in and tell your boss, I want a raise. She never did it. She knew that this person that was almost 10 years younger than her was making 30% more, and at most had the similar job title, but I think she was actually a stair step below, making 30% less. I mean, if that's not deflating, what is? Do you really feel valued if you know that other people are making more than you? The way to solve that is to know what you're capable of, communicating that, and giving them an opportunity to rectify it. If they don't, then you have to ask yourself, do I feel valued enough and comfortable enough in this position that I want to stay? Or do I want to go somewhere else? I mean,
I guess what I'm thinking about when I hear that story is like, is that person, obviously the answer is going to be different for everybody, but like, are they afraid that they are going to negatively impact their current position and be looked at in a different way? Are they just comfortable and don't really care and don't want to go through the stress of having that conversation? Because I mean, like, if I'm sitting there thinking about it, I'm on the same page as you. I'm like, if somebody comes in doing the same thing or less than what I'm doing and making 30% more, I'm going to have some questions.
I think that once you're in, and Kyle, I can't remember, I know you were in sales before, but were you at a big company?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I personally think is that, if you look at 50% of Americans work for a big company or a mid-sized to large company. And I think that once you're in the system, there's job bands, job codes, pay bands, all those kind of things. I think I think women are more hesitant to ask for something they feel is not common or not appropriate or whatever the case may be than men who may just be a little more bold about it. But when you have an existing job, it's not common that people will get a raise for an existing job. So a lot of times people will talk and start negotiating for their existing job placement if they have another offer. It's not that common that people will start asking for more money when there's no offer and no desire to go anywhere else.
That's a fair point.
So I think that was the case for this particular woman, that she didn't really want to go somewhere else, and she probably didn't understand or know how to approach the subject, knowing she wasn't going to get a promotion, because the promotion was to an executive position and she didn't want that position anyway. So how do you ask somebody to say, I need an increase of pay, I've fallen behind, and if you value me, you're going to give this to me? Well, the worst they can say is no. And if you really want to stay there, fine. It's up to you. What's the best thing that can happen though? That they give you more money. So if you're not, and so I use that as an example. In reality, it's probably not the best example, because she really was happy with the job overall. It just really made her upset that they pulled somebody else in. But what I really find is that a lot of people are upset because the money means they don't feel valued. And that is a problem.
Here's the thing. Let me stop for 2 seconds. I don't think it's just the money though, right? We were having this conversation before, actually, maybe it was when we were recording. It may have been before we started recording, but I think it also has to do with how leadership shows people that they're appreciated and valued. I mean, it's as much a cultural issue as it is a monetary issue. And I'm not saying that if you go in and pat people on the back every day and tell them they're doing a great job, that you can get away with paying them 50% of what market rate is. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that the money is certainly the tangible thing, but it's also compounded by the fact that there's not anything in place to where people are getting that feedback that they crave. People want feedback, period. Good, bad, or indifferent. They want to know how they're performing. They want to know how they stack up in your eyes if you're the leader of the organization. And quite frankly, it's our role to provide that to them. And
I'll tell you that's so true. When I took one of the jobs that I formerly had, I threw out what I considered to be a big number, and they came back and asked me to take something crazy, like 2% less, like literally 2% less or something. And I said, I'll take 0.5% less. Like, let me just give them something. They came back and paid me the full amount that I asked. So,
good for you.
I mean, so even though when I came in, after a while, I did kind of figure out not exactly what somebody else was making, but somebody that was like my same job code or whatever band was making slightly more. I still felt fine with it, to your point, David. I felt fine because I liked what I was doing. I negotiated what I wanted and felt was a very good salary for my position and my experience. And so while I thought to myself, should I have asked for more? At the end of the day, I got what I wanted. I felt valued in my job, and I was fine with that. It didn't bother me. If I had been unhappy with my boss or my position or other things with my job, that knowledge probably would have irked me a lot more.
Sure.
I have also seen what I would consider to be the complete opposite in companies. And I know of one right now that's a really good example, and I got to be careful how I describe this because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, because there is an possibility that that could happen. But I know of a company, it's not in the insurance industry. So any of my agent friends, you're off the hook. But it's not in the insurance industry, and it's a company that has a phenomenal culture. The company provides crazy benefits, like just insane time off, all medical, short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, everything. And this company does a semi-annual review at 6 months and an annual review at 12 months. And they look at a variety of factors, but, everybody's given a review just like you would expect them to be given a review, right? And what I mean by that is nobody's exceptional across the board, right? I mean, you can't, if you're getting graded on a scale of 1 to 5 and you go into that review thinking that you should be all 5s, then you're not very self-aware, because there's nobody that's perfect across the board. And so I hear this over and over and over again, and the people that work at this company completely ignore all of the good that's done. And many times the employees at the annual review are given about a 3% raise. Okay. Now I realize that that's not a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but this company does cost of living studies, and they know what the bands are that they should be paying. And I can say unequivocally that the employees are being paid more than what the average market value would be in that area. Yet every single time, probably 80% of the time, I shouldn't say every single time, 80% of the time, I hear stories about how these team members are getting reviews and they're getting a 3% increase, and it's the max. Like, it's the max that's on the company's pay scale. They can't give any more, because then they would have problems with everybody else. But every single person wants to understand why they're only getting 3%. And, the last time I heard about this, the employee had been at the company for 25 years, 25 years, and was complaining that they got a 3% raise. And I went back and I explained to my friend that I was talking to that if you get a 3% raise every year for 24 years, your salary is doubled. That's how it works. Like, that's the rule of 72 in compounding interest. If you take whatever the number is for interest and divide it into 72, that's how many years it will take for your money to double. So that's how I arrived at that. If you take, 3% goes into 72 24 times, this person had doubled their salary in the time they've been there. Now, granted, probably need to if you've been in a place that long, because when you start, it's not the same. But it blows my mind, because I think that there are some times where companies do such a good job with what they do for their employees and have such a great culture that if you're not doing some things like sitting your employees down every year at that annual review mark and going through a total compensation statement with them so that they understand exactly what that is, that they never will. And they get this sense of entitlement, and then there becomes this rift between management and the team. Total compensation statements are something I've done, and I've been aware of since way back when I worked with Target. It's one of the best things I learned from them. But what I know is this, and for anybody listening to this that thinks I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about, I hate to rain on your parade. You're the one wrong here. It always costs.
That's something else. Absolutely. It's especially important to talk about with, I would say, people that have been in the workforce for less than 10 years or don't have a family. It's not just the salary, people. That's what else I have to talk to people about.
More.
Yes. It's like, think about what is your bonus plan? What is your, benefits? What does your cost of insurance? What is your time off? There's many metrics that go into your total compensation. And if you're just looking at the salary part and you're going to jump ship for 2 or 3 or 3, let's call it 2 or 3, 5, 10% of your salary without looking at the rest, you may actually be losing money changing jobs. If you haven't considered everything else, that is really, really important actually to talk about, David. And what I talk to a lot of people about is it's not just that. And if we go back to what we talked about in last week's session on vision and mindset, well, what's your vision for your life? If somebody is offering you 2 or 3 weeks vacation, but the vision for your life is really to have a huge work-life balance and travel, it may be worth taking less money and having more vacation. It goes back to what you value the most in that. And so if you don't think about all those things when you're negotiating, you got to pick what's most important to you. I mean, it'd be great to get, 8 weeks of vacation, have like Europeans, or 12 weeks of vacation, and then also get top dollar. But that's not usually realistic. And another thing that people, when we're talking about big companies or mid-sized companies, whatever the, 5,000 and above employees, is to know, and they don't advertise this, so it actually takes a little bit. If you're trying to ask for more money because you want to stay at your company, you really need to know your company's view on where they want to be compared to their competitors. Some companies internally, that they will not talk about it, to the whole populace, but they want to be right in the middle, like a pay scale. They don't want to be the top payer. They don't want to be the low payer. Some are known to be the low scale payers. I mean, we know about this in insurance too. There's certain companies that are just the low scale payers. And then some really want to be the top tier payers. Well, that also matters. Like when you look at what is the market rate, that's important. But then what does your individual company seek to be when it comes to market rate? Because you also have to be realistic. I mean, you can't be asking for the top 2% tier pay for a job if your company is the low tier payer. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky, but you just need to be realistic about what you're asking for as well, and then factor that into your decision on whether or not you want to stay and try to get more money, or if it's better for you to go somewhere else. If that's if you feel very strongly about what you where you're at on compensation. But the other thing you mentioned, David, was on cost of living raises or adjustments, annual reviews. 3% as the top just drives me crazy. I mean, I know that there's plenty of companies that do that, but then how are you incentivizing your high performers?
Well, those are the ones who get 3.
That seems
keep in
crazy.
Keep in mind, this particular company is employee owned. They get ESOP, they get 401k match. They get more than just that adjustment based on performance. So I understand. And also I know for a fact that every probably 4 or 5 years, they bring a consulting firm in that does the study and realigns what the salaries are based on the different geographies that they operate in, just to make sure that they're staying up there. But if you knew the salaries, and I can't get into too much, but if you knew the salaries relative to the responsibility in this particular organization, you wouldn't feel that way. Because I tell you, in my mind, people are a bunch of whiny babies and they need to be happy with what they've got.
Well, it's all relative. I mean, if you're getting a 3% raise on $40,000 salary versus
this is a 3% raise on $100,000.
That's what I was getting, it's a huge difference. I mean, it's all relative. It makes a huge difference. So as you get to be a mid-tier and an upper tier earner, if you're making $100,000 salary or more, the same percent, across all individuals is a huge difference. It really is. I don't know that it's really equitable if you changed it for people making under this or over that. But it's definitely something to consider. And your first 10 years, jumping up in the pay scale, if you're a high performer, shouldn't be that hard. So if your company is making it that hard for you to jump bands, then, that's something to consider. But this is also really meaningful for women producers or women in sales in general, to know their worth and to ask for it. Because I think it's very easy if you're in a competitive situation. Like, look, if you're participating in an RFP with another company and you're talking about, you're putting a fee out there and somebody else is putting a fee out there. And what if I'm asking for too much? And are they going to make the decision on the fee alone? You got to come back to your mindset and what your personal value is if you want to be the cheap guy, if that's your personal brand and that's what you believe in, be the cheap guy. Maybe you'll get more business. I don't know. I don't really believe that, but you need to know how much time it's going to take you to work on an account, or what your product is and what the value of that product is, and then have an ask that you believe in, and don't worry about what other people are going to ask for. You have to believe that what you're asking for is what you're worth, and don't waver from it if you don't feel comfortable. Don't feel like you have to win the business by cheapening yourself. What I believe and what I've lived by in insurance and in agency, and talking about, what our fees are going to be, what I've lived by is I know more, I care more, and I make sure to dive into the details. And there is a lot of value in that. So yeah, at the end of the day, my services are going to be more. And hey, when you start talking about solid middle market accounts, David and Kyle, things that you guys are working on, whatever you're charging is not that much compared to what they're paying for insurance. Keep that in mind, right? So if you're charging 25% more than your competitor for your fee, let's say you're charging $100,000 fee and the other guy offered a $60,000 fee. You know what? If you can put together the most impactful, most efficient program, that could save them more than $100,000 anyway. So the fee is a small component of the big program, and trying to negotiate and compete on that is just ridiculous to me. I mean, I've been on the other side, I've been a risk manager, and I can tell you, I would rather pay for talent to know that my claim situations and or my program isn't going to have holes, and pay more for the right person instead of paying less for somebody else. So, you just got to know that, and you got to own that, and you got to make sure that you're getting what you feel is the right value for your services. And it's just, more difficult for women. I don't know if it's DNA difference or, just the opportunities and kind of environment that women have been in. But the statistics show that it's just more difficult. So for all the agency owners out there that have women producers or are looking to train an account manager to be a producer, I would say that this is somewhere you really want to focus on, is making sure that they feel very confident in what they have to deliver, the team behind them, and that they're going to position themselves to getting what they know is their correct value. Because at the end of the day, it can make a difference, especially to them. I mean, you as the producer, that's your livelihood, and you want to make sure that you're being rewarded for your good work and your efforts and your knowledge and your skill.
I think the other part of it is when you do have females in that position, whether it be bringing them in as a producer or promoting somebody up, if that's such a thing as being a promotion, I would say there's plenty of great account managers out there that should never be considered a promotion to go to a producer. It's actually a step down for them. But I think it's really important that the leadership of the organization make sure that they reinforce the fact they have an open door policy and that things can be tabled and they're open for discussion. I don't think anybody should feel uncomfortable. And again, if people do, I have to believe it's as much a cultural issue inside the organization as anything else, because they should be able to have that conversation and not think anything of it. And I realize that just because one place does it right doesn't mean it's going to erase, history where they've been burnt by people before or denigrated or whatever else. So, I don't say that lightly, but I do think it's something that's relatively easy and then needs to be reinforced on a regular basis, both by reminding people that, you're available and you have an open ear, but then also proactively soliciting feedback from them, right? It would be much easier for a female producer to want to have that conversation about money if I'm the one who started it. Said, hey, look, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Tell me about how things are going.
That's a good point.
How do you feel about your compensation? Do you think we're taking care of you the way we should be? Because this is something I'm obviously concerned about as the owner of the organization. How's your work-life balance? And it can just be one of many things that you talk about, but it goes back to what we said before. We have to be having constant communication with our people and staying in front of them so that they understand that we do care and that we do want what's best for them. Look, I know that we're all three ready to go just devour whatever we can find in terms of food, because we'd said it before. But before we go, I want to let everybody know I've got some exciting news that I want to share with our audience. And that is that Crystal is getting ready to launch in 2023 her own podcast. And coincidentally, It's going to talk about a lot of types of things that we talked about today. So I don't want to steal your thunder. Tell them what the podcast is going to be about, what the name of it is. You're going to be able to find this everywhere. But I want you to pay attention to what Crystal has to say. I think that you will gain so much by listening to it. And the other thing is, Crystal is one of the best LinkedIn follows that you can get. She is constantly active, putting out relevant stuff. I'm enough of an insurance nerd that I actually follow her and that other lady, Laura Gregory, that you're connected with. And I read the case law that comes out and all of that other stuff. And I mean, I know that just being connected to her on LinkedIn has made me better. And so reach out to her and connect. You will not be disappointed that you do. So, Crystal, you're going to end it. Tell them about your podcast and what you have on your mind, and we're going to wrap this thing up.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that introduction, David, to what we're going to launch next year, which is going to be called Get Clear with Crystal Ware. And at some point, hopefully in January, my website will be ready for crystalwaremedia.com. And as I've mentioned, I just really love talking with women, not just women. I'm happy to talk with men too, but to make sure that people can get clear on their visions, know, own, and ask their worth, and become the CEOs of their own life, because, you know, you are made for more, you deserve happiness. And, you know, a lot of times it's just making the space in your life and having the right mentor and person to guide you to thinking about your vision, getting clear on it, and then falling in line with the steps that will take you there. Whether that means, you know, you want to change industries, you want to start your own business, you want to take a sabbatical from your business. All of it is meaningful, and there's a way to do all of it if you just put the right steps in place. And I really feel passionate about this. So that's why I'm making time and space in my life and my career to be able to work with other people and help them and put out really great content. And one of the things we're going to focus on the podcast is talking to entrepreneurs like you, David, and other people with inspirational stories to help people see there's no one direct path, no one linear path, that everybody has struggles, and that there's a lot of interesting ways that you can come to, you know, the right destiny and right vision for your life and what that looks like. So I appreciate you sharing that with your audience. It's been great. I'll look forward to more shop talks and just bringing great content and value to everyone.
That's awesome. Listen, people, she has been Crystal Ware. Go find her on LinkedIn. Look out for her podcast when it comes out. Download it, subscribe, leave her feedback. Please do a better job than you do with us. We never get reviews. We never get stars. It's crazy. We got like 300 episodes out, and we barely got 100 reviews. 25,000 downloads a month. And
I'm just going to have to nuke my whole family with like over Thanksgiving, like just get on there. 'Cause, I mean, there's gonna be 30 people at my house. So maybe I can just get all 30 of them to just go throw us a like, since nobody else will do it.
Absolutely.
The listeners are there.
Yeah, done asking. We're not going to beg for it.
Yeah,
Listen,
whatever.
everybody have a great weekend. We'll catch you next week. See ya.
ya.